Hi, my name's Luke Thomas, Area Vice President of Appian, Asia Pacific and Japan. And we're here in Melbourne today with our Industry Vice President of Financial Services, Guy Mettrick, to talk about financial services trends and AI process automation. Guy, welcome to Melbourne. Thanks so much for coming to join us.
Thanks, Luke. Delighted to be here.
What, in your experience, are the challenges we're seeing in financial services institutions? Are these similar to what you're seeing in other parts of the world?
I think the whole world is in the grip of a high interest rate environment. Lots of discussions about how long that will last, probably longer than many people expect. That has a real impact on the way that banks are able to run their businesses. Lending, for instance, becomes much more profitable, but an existing loan book potentially is more at risk from potential issues around ability of customers to pay back their money. There's also other issues around the profitability of organizations after we've had low interest rates for so long. And this is, I think, a big driver for some of the change that we're seeing in financial services, both here in Australia, but also globally as well. Some of the things I think are also very prevalent are, given the issues that some of the US regional banks had last year, I think compliance and regulation will continue to bear down on the industry. I think Australia is a very regulated, heavily regulated financial services industry here, and I think that will cascade across globally. We're already seeing new legislation coming in Europe around operational resilience. Australia has similar regulations in place, and I think that is going to also be a big driver for change across the industry. So there are a lot of headwinds, but there are also a lot of opportunities, I think, for organizations that are able to embrace that change and adapt for them to be very successful.
And where are you seeing Australian financial services institutions leading the way?
So I think technology and their adoption, especially around some of the innovation around fintech organizations here in Australia, I think have shown how organizations can rapidly disintermediate financial services. I think the adoption of technology within those fintech firms, I think, is creating a driver for change within some of the other financial services organizations, the larger firms. And I think that is a very interesting situation for the Australian market. I also think that some of the new technology that people are seeing, around generative AI, machine learning, I think the organizations here are being seen as early adopters. And I think that's going to have quite a profound impact on the industry, the whole industry, from retail to SME banking to corporate banking. So I think that's very interesting. And I think internationally, financial services firms could probably learn a lot from what's taking place here in the Australian market.
What are the most significant benefits that AI process automation platforms have brought to the financial services industry, both in Australia but also globally?
So if you think about the real drivers, the goals that financial services organizations have, you can typically boil it down to three areas. It's about growing revenues, delivering an improved, better customer experience. It's about managing your costs and making sure that your organizations are run as efficiently as possible. And clearly the third element is around control of your risk and your compliance obligations, and being able to demonstrate that you have the appropriate controls in place to manage the risk and ensure that you're delivering against the regulations in which your firms operate. And AI process automation can actually deliver against all of those three business goals. And I think that's quite important, because this isn't just about a revenue growth story or a cost efficiency story. It's about improving the way that the business runs itself, but also the way that it interacts with its customers. And therefore, this can have a really profound impact in the way that customers are treated by their financial services organizations, but also how efficiently and how effectively those industries are run. So it can have really dramatic impact in a number of different ways across an organization. The other thing, if it's done correctly, is it allows these organizations the ability to change and evolve. And as you know, there are some real drivers in the industry for change. Things like regulation, again, upcoming regulation, but also the idea of new technology, customer expectations. All of these external drivers for change are being inhibited by various issues that exist within financial services organizations. You've got legacy architecture, you've got siloed data, you've got huge levels of complexity that exist within these organizations. And if you're able to use technology in a way that allows and facilitates change within the organization and the ability to adapt to meet all of those change drivers, then that puts you in a very, very strong position.
Guy, would you mind sharing some examples of where you've seen process automation initiatives within the financial services industry successfully applied?
If you think about where complex processes exist within a financial services organizations, one where those processes really matter, the first one and most obvious one is in the customer journey. And that includes not only the onboarding of new customers, or if they're existing customers, but having new products, and managing all of the complexity around those processes, both from a risk perspective, but also from a regulatory perspective. If you are able to apply process automation to those elements of work that is involved within a financial services organization, managing that process, then that can give real tangible benefits. It doesn't end there, though, because as you start to interact with that customer, they have queries, they have questions that they need to address. There's a lot of communication between the organization and that financial services firm, and all of that can be managed much more effectively with process automation. So that customer journey, right the way through to the successful offboarding of that customer, is a complex set of processes that benefit tremendously from AI process automation. The second area is really around operational excellence. If you're looking at your complex operational processes, being able to optimize them from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective, that provides huge opportunities for process automation. Being able to link together disparate point solutions with existing data within them, those kind of processes are typically done by people, managing, toggling between screens, cutting, data into Excel spreadsheets and emailing it. That is a prime area for process automation. But it has to be the right platform, because what you need to do is surface data from many different applications, combine it with data from other systems to allow you to run a process off the back of it. And if you're able to do that, then you're really able to start delivering some real efficiency improvements, and also enable you to start embedding your risk controls directly into those automated processes. And the third area where we have seen a huge amount of growth since the financial crisis in 2008, 2009 is around governance, risk, and compliance, and managing effectively those risk and compliance processes that exist across all three lines of defense for risk management. So you have your group functions, group risk, compliance, group finance, internal audit. All of these functions have grown tremendously in scope and the work needed to do in order to comply with the regulations over the last 14, 15 years. Those functions are ripe opportunities for process automation to help them run those processes more effectively and efficiently, but also provide much greater visibility on those processes for auditors, for the regulators, to actually show that you are in control of those processes and you're delivering against your compliance obligations.
What would you see as the critical technology trends over the next, 2 to 3 years that will be really relevant in the financial services industry going forward, both here in Australia and also across the globe?
Well, the huge question is clearly around AI, generative AI, and the impact that that's going to have across all areas of financial services. There's already a huge debate about how quickly that technology is going to impact the industry. I personally think it's probably going to be sooner than 2 to 3 years. I think you will start to see some real change over the next 12 months or so. But there's still a lot of debate as to how best to meet the regulatory requirements that financial services organizations have in an environment where there are some very open large language models, ChatGPT, for instance, and how they comply with their responsibilities around data protection, but also meet their obligations in terms of understanding the ways in which those decisions and that insight is being made. Now, there's this whole debate going on about private versus public AI. Private AI means you have a large language model that's trained on your data. It doesn't get shared with other data and insight from other firms. That then allows you to be much more programmatic about the data that is being fed to train the models, and that allows you to be much more controlled in terms of things that you might want to avoid, like hallucinations or indeed bias. What that also allows you to do, if it's done properly, is it allows you to arrive at much more defensible outcomes, so that you're able to explain how those models ended up with the insight or the outcomes that they were proposing using the data that you've had and clearly within your organization. There's another benefit as well. You're protecting your organization's data. You're not sharing it with other organizations. And therefore, I think private AI is going to be much more prevalent within heavily regulated industries like financial services, rather than some of these more open models like ChatGPT. If that's the case, then I think that there are some really strong use cases for the technology across financial services, both in the ways that you impact the way that your customers interact with your organization, but also in the way that you make use of the data that's within your organization, but spread over such a large, disparate set of systems and databases. Using AI to be able to gain insight from all of that disparate information, I think is going to be transformational within financial services. And I think there are many more use cases, especially around risk and compliance, where these large language models are going to start having a very profound impact. I'm optimistic that the impact that AI and Gen AI is going to have within financial services is going to happen much more quickly than people think, and be quite profound in terms of the impact.
It's fascinating to hear the stories you're sharing about what trends you're seeing both here in Australia and globally, and how technology has a real influence on supporting financial service institutions. I'd love to understand what you're observing around how Appian's supporting those financial services institutions to apply that innovation.
So Appian is an AI process automation platform. What that means is that we're able to utilize across this unified platform a range of technologies and capabilities that support automation of processes and the surfacing of data from many different systems into common processes. Now, process automation doesn't always mean straight through processing. Sometimes it can mean gathering of data to allow your business's SMEs to make better, quicker, more effective decisions using all of the information that is available to them and has been gathered and presented to them in an easy-to-consume format. So process automation for me is really about bringing together technology, processes, people, and data. And if you do that in a way that is flexible enough to be not only delivered in the timescales that your businesses need, but then also to be able to be adapted as changing business needs, changing regulatory and risk needs dictate, then you have a very, very powerful capability to not only deliver against all of those goals that we discussed earlier on around customer experience, process efficiency, and risk, but also provide an environment in which that organization is nimble enough to be able to adapt to changes. And that platform approach that Appian is leading the way with, I think, is absolutely the right way to go from a process and data perspective, working within the existing environment that companies already have in order to be able to deliver that automated experience, that digital experience, and deliver on those goals that we were discussing earlier on.
Thanks, Guy. Insightful to hear your observations and what you're seeing around financial services here in Australia and also around the globe. We really appreciate you coming to join us here in Australia. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks, Luke.